Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our channel. I'm Les.
And I'm Nina. I have a master's degree in history. I study dead people.
I'm not a historian. But who are we going to be talking about today, Nina?
Cleopatra VII of Egypt.
So, was there a sixth and a fifth?
There were, just like in our Henry VIII episode, right? This is her regnal name.
Oh, okay. So, do we know what her real name was?
It was probably Cleopatra.
Oh,
In the ancient world, you often would name your children after their mothers or fathers.
it's not like they had a whole lot of names back then.
They didn't really. In fact, most of the time you have your regnal name and then you have some kind of nickname, right, that differentiates you based on some kind of characteristic you have.
Oh, okay. So, let's start off with her history. What can you tell us about her childhood? What can you tell us about her childhood?
Well, she was born in 69 BCE. Her father was Ptolemy the 12th, Auletes. We don't really know who her mom was. Her father had several wives, one of which was Macedonian. That's the first thing to realize. She's not Egyptian. Well, she's probably not, she's not all Egyptian anyway. Um, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. When he died, his generals actually split up the territory he had gained, and the Ptolemy family got Egypt. So they're Greek, they're Macedonians. So was her mom also Macedonian? One of Oletes's wives were. But there's also suspect that some of his wives were actually part of the Egyptian royal religious elite. So she may have also been part Egyptian. We know she has an excellent education, right? We know that Plutarch says she studied 9 languages. In fact, she was the only Ptolemaic ruler that ever bothered to learn Egyptian.
So, she was a ruler.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. She was also, according to Arabic scholars, a scientist, a philosopher, and a chemist. So, um, one of um, Mark Antony's generals once said she had amazing political acumen, very well educated. But beyond that, we don't know that much about her childhood.
Really? Would history look back and say that she was a good ruler?
I think it depends on who you ask.
Okay.
Right? She was 18 when she comes to the throne. She rules with her 2 younger brothers, both of whom she married. She married her younger brother, Ptolemy the 13th. When he died, she married her youngest brother, Ptolemy the 15th, the 14th.
So why is she marrying her brothers?
That is a very old Egyptian tradition
Uh-huh.
where the royal family would intermarry, often brother sister marriages, to keep the royal family all the treasure, all the wealth, all the power in a single family. And so we know that Cleopatra followed this.
Wow. Were they not aware of genetic issues from that back then, or?
No, and there are certainly Egyptian dynasties in which there are physical impairments, probably that were genetic, but that really wasn't understood at the time.
Gotcha. So, she was educated.
She was, like I said, she spoke multiple languages. She was seen. Um, Here's the thing: the Romans didn't like her, right? They saw her taking 2 of their greatest statesmen away from Rome. And so when her enemy, Octavian, wins and becomes Roman emperor, gets Egypt as kind of his own personal province, all of the Roman authors and historians really vilify her. They say she's a seductress, they say that she's a witch, they say that she ensnared Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Um,
Lots of propaganda stuff.
Lots of propaganda, right? But on the other side, we have a tradition in Arabic writers. And they're working off of early Greek manuscripts from the time she lived and right after, who claims that she's really capable, right? That she is very politically savvy. They mentioned that she has the fewest revolts of any Macedonian, any Ptolemaic ruler in 150 years, right? So her people were happy.
So she had happy followers. Oh,
She
excellent.
did. She was certainly the richest ruler in the Mediterranean. She built fleets of ships. She suppressed insurrections. She controlled her currency, right? And like I said, she's well regarded in medicine for her knowledge of herbs, her knowledge of medicines, which is probably where the Roman propaganda of her, right, ensnaring or somehow seducing, right, Caesar and Mark Antony, that she had created some concoction, right? But really,
Some potion and stuff. I
some
see.
potion,
Yeah,
right? Maybe a love
gotcha.
potion. Um, but no, I mean, she was very well educated in medicine, magic, and alchemy.
So the marriage to her. Tell us a little bit about her brothers. So she did she break up with one of them and then remarry the other one, or did one of them die, or this confusing uh, um, piece of history?
Sure. Ptolemy the 13th, I had mentioned, was her younger brother. She was 18, he was much younger. As he got older, we started noticing, like, on official documents, her name came first because she was the more important of the rulers.
Mm.
As he got older, he didn't like this, right? And so he actually starts a civil war. And we know that Cleopatra actually flees, right? He kicks her out of the palace
Oh wow.
and rules kind of on his own. Well, Pompey, who had been a pretty famous and well regarded Roman general, was fighting against Julius Caesar. He flees to Egypt, right? Because Ptolemy the 13th had supported him. Well, somebody killed him in Egypt. So even though Julius Caesar had been Pompey's enemy, he didn't like this, right? We can kill our generals, you can't kill them.
Uh-huh.
So he comes and, he's pretty upset about this happening under Ptolemy the 13th's watch. Um, he was there. Cleopatra's father had lots of debts to Rome. He wants to collect. So Cleopatra decides that she's going to get Julius Caesar on her side. She has herself smuggled into the palace. Remember, she's been kicked out. She's in the middle of a civil war. She puts herself and rolls herself in a carpet,
It sounds like a cartoon. Okay.
right? Gets herself smuggled into, right, the private area where Julius Caesar is staying, unwraps herself, throws herself on his feet, begs for his mercy and support,
Uh-huh.
right? We know they become lovers. We know he helps her defeat her younger brother. Her younger brother is dead. Well, she gets pregnant with Caesar's son. She claims it's Caesar's son. Um, but, to keep up formalities, she marries the second brother, right? Her second brother, Ptolemy the 14th, drowns in a river. By this point, Ptolemy the 15th, Caesar has been born, the child of Caesar. Roman sources call him Caesarion. But we know that she and Caesar were together for a while. Keep in mind, Caesar's married, right?
So she was his mistress?
She was his mistress, right? In fact, she goes with him to Rome
Mm-hmm.
and he puts her up in one of his villas outside of the city. She's a foreign ruler. She can't stay in Rome itself. She's actually there when he's assassinated,
Oh wow.
right? In which time she flees with her child back to Egypt.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that she was, did you say a philosopher and
Mhm.
What was the other ones?
She was a philosopher, a scholar, a scientist, and a chemist.
So what kind of did she actually accomplish or create anything during her time, or discoveries, or?
We know that many of the scrolls in the Library of Alexandria, which is in Egypt,
Uh-huh.
right, when it was burned, many of those scrolls are destroyed. In fact, as much as 70% of the written works of the ancient Mediterranean were lost.
Mm-hmm.
We do have treatises from the Arab scholars that talk about treatises that she worked on, treatises she created,
Treatises.
treatises, something she wrote.
Oh, okay.
And they tended to be on medicine.
Uh-huh.
Um, we have some pages that are purported to be right translations of her work in chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so she certainly wrote a lot, but we have echoes of her work, right, based on what survives.
Okay. And how would you say she was viewed by her people back then?
Like I said, her people had the fewest rebellions,
Uh-huh.
right? She her the company the
So
com-
she kind of was kind of like a diplomat back then. I mean, she kind of had that.
yeah, she was a
She knew how to.
monarch. I mean, she would have been, in my opinion, the most capable monarch of her day, right? She ruled for more than 20 years, most of it by herself.
Did she die from that, or was she able to retire? Or
She committed suicide.
oh, she did.
Um, Remember, I told you she had stayed in Rome with Julius Caesar. And one of Rome's traditions is when they defeated you in war, they would, of course, take your stuff, but they would take the leaders and put them in cages and would have a parade,
Oh
right?
my!
As you were
Wow.
being paraded, likely to your death. Well, she knew this.
She didn't want to go through that.
She didn't want to go through that. She and Mark Antony, by this point, had been married. They had 3 children together. They had actually gone to war against Octavian, who becomes Augustus Caesar,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they lose. So they flee back in 31 BCE to Egypt. And Mark Antony is kind of doing his thing, she's doing hers. Someone comes in and tells him that Cleopatra has died. So he falls on his sword because he doesn't want to live without her. She finds out about this and realizes, well, she's not dead. So she goes back and she finds him. He hasn't quite died yet, and he dies in her arms. Well, remember, she's now been defeated by Rome. Her lover and presumably her largest protector is dead. She knows Augustus is coming for her. She doesn't want to be in a cage in the streets
No,
of Rome,
yeah, it's understandable.
right? So she commits suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Shakespeare claimed that she had an asp, which is a venomous snake in Egypt, bite her. That's kind of the romantic version of how she dies. We don't really know by what method.
Oh wow.
Mhm.
So, what do you think? How has she influenced the world that we live in today? What do you see as a result of her ruling?
Well, I think it's interesting that so many Roman historians have spent centuries bad mouthing her, right? And so she has this, Mark Antony. We know that the way that they meet is he's on a campaign to Parthia, and Julius Caesar's died. Her son is Caesar's legitimate child, at least according to Egyptian law. He's legitimate. Well, Octavian is his heir. So Octavian and the people who come out after him have to like rationalize why Caesar's son isn't his successor, right? And so she knows Mark Antony is at that point the most powerful Roman general.
Hmm.
So she goes and displays her wealth, right? She has fleets of ships, right? She has decorated her ship so that as she comes into harbor, right, it sparkles, right? She
The
is
first glitter.
glitter, right? She's decked to the nines,
Uh-huh.
right? We know by the end of her trip they're lovers, and he supports her and her son. Well, he goes back. He makes nice with Octavian. He even marries Octavian's sister, right? But at some point, they have a falling out. And he's like, you know what? Forget Rome. I don't want this. He goes, he marries, right? He divorces his wife. He marries Cleopatra. They have 3 children together. It seems like it was a very happy relationship. So one of the things that influenced is the wealth of Egypt. The wealth of Egypt becomes part of the Roman emperor's personal wealth. It gives
Oh, wow.
Octavian a lot of money and his successors, right? Not just to be lavish on themselves, but to ensure, right, that they stay in power. Two, right, the fact that so many people spoke badly to her, and yet we have this Arabic tradition that really talks about the good things that she does and how
Mhm.
capable she is. A lot of feminist scholars and scholars of women look to her, right, and have tried to kind of rehabilitate her popular image. Um, really focusing on just how amazing of a ruler she was. And three, interestingly enough, the conversations about what her racial ethnicity was is one that comes up a lot. Was she all Macedonian? Was she part Egyptian? Why did she bother to learn Egyptian, for example, when
Mhm.
none of her predecessors did? And so in 2009, BBC actually did a documentary in which archaeologists had claimed to find the skeleton of Arsinoe IV. She's Cleopatra's sister,
Mhm. Wow.
and concluded that Arsinoe IV did have some Egyptian features, so that this sister of Cleopatra's was half Macedonian, half Egyptian, perhaps even Black Egyptian,
Oh, wow.
right?
Interesting.
And so, is it a conclusive that yes, the mother or grandmother of Cleopatra was Egyptian? No, but it's interesting, and scholars even now it's like this tantalizing clue that this very capable ruler wasn't just a woman, right, in a world of men, but perhaps was even a mixed race woman.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Great talk. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Nina, for this very enlightening conversation.
Mhm.
We hope that you'll hit the like and subscribe button. Um, is there anything else?
Yeah, if you have a comment, please let us know. Let us know if you're enjoying it. If you have feedback for us, or even if you want to suggest someone for us to talk about, just go ahead and use that comment button.
Thanks for watching. Bye bye.
Bye.